Mesdames, le représentant du secrétaire du cabinet du ministère kenyan de la communication et des médias, Madame la représentante du secrétaire général du Bureau des Nations Unies pour la réduction des risques et catastrophes, Madame Fanny Langelia, Madame la directrice régionale du Centre d'information des Nations Unies, cher Monsieur Ahmed Idriss, directeur exécutif des sociétés de la Croix-Rouge du Kenya, chers collègues.
Yeah, we've had from the Acting Managing Director of the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, Paul Mashara, speaking at the AUB Media Summit on Climate Change, happening just next door at the Boulevard. And speaking right now is Greg Wanjaka, who is the CEO of the Africa Union of Broadcasters. We'll be getting back as the Principal Secretary, State Department for Broadcasting and Telecommunications, Professor Edward Kisiangani, will be giving the summit's opening keynote address. So that's coming up. We continue our conversation, and this is about the Rugby Super Series, and we're with Paul Odera, who's in charge of the high performance at the Rugby Super Series. So, Paul, let's talk ideally about what the feeder system that we eventually, because we've seen some cheaper players being called up to the franchises. The Kenya Rugby Union at the moment has a development plan where you've got the age grades in charge of the younger ones. Yeah. Yes. Then you've got Chipu, who've qualified for Scotland. Yes. And what is it that you'd like to see, you know, with the under-17s and now the under-20?
It's a very good thing to have a pathway. So what it's normally called is a pathway. So you want to see if Wahome is really talented as a scrum half at the age of 10, how are we going to support him to fulfill on his potential? Whether he becomes a Simba or not is immaterial. But what path are we going to put for him so that when he's 19 or 20 or when he's in university, he can play? So right now, the building blocks are being put in place for the Simbas. I'm running the under-18 program, so I went round. I haven't been round since 2006, I think, to watch schoolboy rugby, and I was so impressed. But just the passion and even the skill levels. And also now, because of YouTube and what's available and what's up, people are really in touch with what's going on in the latest in terms of coaching. So I found a lot of coaches have a lot of the information. So the teams are playing a very good structure. But mine is to bring the structure down from the Simbas down to the under-18s. Then you have the under-20s. Ideally, we'd need one more team between Simbas and the under-20s. Because a 19 or 20-year-old is perhaps still not the finished product. You imagine putting a prop who's 19 up against 29-year-old prop who's now fused as an adult male. Okay, that can present its own challenges. So maybe an under-23.
Unless you're Skulk Bagger.
Unless there are some who by 12 look like they're 18 years old. Bagger, obese, Tutarira, or the rest of them. So sometimes that's possible. So again, those are the building blocks to try and get a pathway. What ideally should really be the future of development is that clubs, schools, universities should form like a group. So what you'd want is that from kindergarten or the primary school, so if you take Ngong Road, for example, there's Jamhuri Primary. Yes. So you'd want Jamhuri Primary aligned with
Impala or Queens?
Queens, Impala. Then aligned with which, there's Makini, there's Riara, there's some schools around that area. Then there's a university right next to it. So if the university, the club, and the schools were all together, then if they are producing players through their pathway, then it makes it easier to track players across the country through each pathway. So for example, Kisumu would want Kisumu Boys or Kisumu High, there's Yala, there's Maseno, then that would feed into Kisumu RFC, which would then feed into Maseno University, and then that way they can be able to build players through there. So that is my utopian dream for
if Kabrasi, that they'll work very closely with Kakamega High School.
Chavakali, Kakamega, Butula. I mean, the Kabras, the feeder that they have there, then they'd have to work closely with Masinde, Muliro, which they already are. So you can see the future for Kabras. They're actually doing it. They have ties with Masinde Muliro, because sometimes some of those players come and play in their ESS team. They have ties with Butula. The Butula fullback plays for the ESS team for Kabras. But you can see even when he finishes this year as a Form 4, then they'll be able to see, right, do you get him into Masinde Muliro and how do we support him? So they have their system right, and you'll see that they're setting up their future really well as Cabra. So that would be the ideal. And you'd want the coast, Mombasa RFC, the Pwani University, the Shibolatewa, around that whole area. So if those could all come in together, then it would help.
Let me talk about the under-20s. Two things as we come to a close. Number one, Chipu, the impact of that win against Zimbabwe. We remember what they were saying about the under-20 side. I mean, somebody had said Kenya doesn't have the rugby brains, but there's some form of intelligence that they are playing with that works. So that's the first one. And number two, the probables for Madrid. The Madrid promotion relegation player.
Seventh. Okay, let's start with the easier one, which is Chipu. They are right, because if you look at Zimbabwe players, they're very polished. But remember, Zimbabwe play Currie Cup under 13. They play Currie Cup under 16. Zimbabwe can choose for you national under 11 side, based on the systems they have. So our boys, it's not that they're any less talented, but because they don't have the building blocks through the pathway, right through the age grade system, they may not have the finesse. However, I think credit goes to Simon Jawichre and also the Simbas setup. All the resources for the Simbas were brought to support the under-20s in the preparations. So Brian Omondi was doing the defense, Carlos was doing the scrummaging, and so a lot of that. And Jerome Powerwater was also working with them. So when all that was put together, I think it contributed to a very good result. And it changes the game. Because if you look at the Chipu players who qualified in 2019 to go to Brazil, they are now playing good rugby across for different clubs. The same thing with this Chipu team. When they finish that, they'll be able to play across the club. So even if they don't make the Simbas, but you'll find that the standards of rugby will be raised. Now we go to sevens.
USA, Spain, Samoa, and Canada facing relegation from
confirmed. Yes.
From the 12 core teams in the 7 series. Uruguay, Kenya, Chile, and Germany. But before that, there is Munich, where Kenya faced Chile, Portugal, and Japan.
Yeah, I think we'll make the top 4. Yeah, that's for sure, because we're tied at the top. Barring a complete disaster, we should make the top 4. Ideally, we want to finish number 1 or 2, because when you look at the teams who are coming down, the bottom 4 teams from the HSBC series, it's going to be a tough one. Look, but that's the nature. If we always knew it was going to be tough, but getting back will not be easy. But if we can finish 1 or 2 and then get a good placing, and then in Madrid it will be all to play for. Day 1, I think we're in a pool. You play 3 games, then you're seeded again. Number 1 pool A plays number 4 pool B, and then number 2 plays number 3. And then after that, it's winner takes all. Because if you win that game, once you're in the semis, you're in the HSBC series. So it's possible. The guys are building well. And it's helped that also there's the Olympics that's coming as well, which they're building to. Because once you're building for the Olympics, means you come under the umbrella of the National Olympic Council, which then helps because there are certain costs that can be supported with that. So that's a good thing. So I don't know, Wahome, it's going to be tough, but as you said earlier when we were talking off camera, people almost seem to have lost interest in HSBC series because our boys are not there. So if our boys can get back there, I'm sure you'll see the renewed interest in it.
Yes, we'll be seeing a lot of renewed interest in that competition. So on the 18th and 19th of May in Munich, that's where Shuja will be competing. So the in Pool C alongside Kenya, Chile, Portugal, and Japan. Well, the Lioness, by the way, also building up towards the Olympics. And they're in an interesting pool: Belgium, Poland, and Mexico in Krakow.
Our Lionesses, we did really well in the first event. We didn't do well in South America, and I think that has really put us in a difficult position because now we're leaving it for other results to go our way for the ladies to be able with a chance to play in that last in that big tournament in Madrid. It's still there, slim chance, but you never know with sevens. If our girls can play well, get themselves, if they can get in the semis or even into the final, in Poland, then they have a good chance of perhaps making that top 4 to get into the Madrid tournament.
Well, you've had it from Paul Odera. Oh yeah, just one last one.
Yes.
Schools, there was a lot of interest in the schools' Term 1 games. What did you pick out from the various coaches who are working with the schools?
Very passionate coaches. at that level. They're willing to learn, which is excellent. But the boys are playing the game with a passion that schoolboys usually play. You remember schools rugby?
Yes.
The singing is still there. The boys still approach the game with 100% commitment. And the best thing about it is that the game is being played across Kenya. If you've seen the lists that are coming up for the under-18 teams, we've got even a northeastern list. We've got a team from Central. Rift Valley was a challenge because there's North Rift, South Rift, then we had to combine it. But the coaches were brilliant. They were there. They made sure that they select the players. And I think the game is in a good place, looking at that level of commitment from those coaches and the players at the schoolboy level.
Oh, thank you very much. Paul Odera, he is a high-performance chief of the Rugby Super Series, and I will also tell you that we shall be keeping up with this, and remember, 3 more weekends of the Rugby Super Series that will be coming up. So next conversation, it will be about the Sports Business Summit that will be hosted by Strathmore University's Business School on Thursday, the 9th of May 2024. And 2 other stories that we are keeping tabs on. One, the AUB Media Summit, so we shall be taking a look at that. And also, later, we'll be talking about the internationals, the ISF All Schools Cross Country Championships that Kenya will be hosting and will be live on KBC Channel 1. KCB versus Kariobangi Sharks highlights for our transition.
Kenya raundi ya 28 kutafuta alama 3 uwanja huu wa Polisi Sako. Imekuwa ni siku nzuri kabisa, ikapigwa hapa picha pamoja, picha kumbukumbu ambayo mwamuzi Ongaga Simeon, mwalimu wa fasihi mkipenda literature, akaianzisha ngoma, kitu ambacho moja kwa moja wakaanza mashambulizi vijana wa mwalimu Ben Mwalala. Hii ilikuwa nafasi nzuri kabisa kwa KCB kuweza kutangulia, lakini kikubwa ataangaliwa, je, mchezaji Ian Karani alimshika David Otanga?
Ndio, alimshika akamvuta, lakini akakwenda chini, na hapa akajaribu kuteta angalau labda Simeone kumzawadi mkwaji wa tuta, lakini pia wakawa wamesiagana kweli kweli na mlinda mlango Wekesa, na ikawa kwamba hamna madhambi ya kusababisha mkwaju wa tuta labda kupeana. Wakaanza kutafuta goli la kuongoza. Hawa ni Kariobangi Sharks, akapanda kwa uzuri kabisa 19 mgongoni Steve Bwire, akaileta kwa uzuri kabisa, akaipangua Shikalo, alafu naye John Mark Makwata akaipata wakati sahihi, sehemu sahihi, akajaza ule mpira ndani ya nyavu.
Goli ambalo amelipata Makwata dakika ya 10 ya mchezo, unaweza ukasema hapa aliweza kuwapatia mazingira mazuri, lakini atakuwa analaumika sana Faruk Shikalo maana alivyopiga ule mpira, alivyopangua cross yake mchezaji mwite Steven Bwire, ikana kwamba ni chipukizi, lakini tajriba nayo mlinda mlango Faruk Shikalo. Angalia tukio jingine hapa, mchezaji Makwata pembezoni akaipenyeza kwa Victor Ngume, akajaribu kuingia tena Sabwire kwa mara nyingine tena, anapiga assist yake ya pili, na mara hii anaunganisha Julius Masaba. Vile vile alivyounganisha mchezaji Makwata, Masaba akamalizia udia.
Ndio, ndani ya dakika 3 tu baada ya bao lake John Mark Makwata, naye Masaba anafanya mambo yake kwa uzuri kabisa, lakini apewe heko na sifa Steve Bwire kwa kazi nzito aliyoifanya kuleta ile mipira, ikawa kwamba inasababisha na kuwa ni magoli. Goli likawa ni la pili kwa Kariobangi Sharks ndani ya dakika ya 13. Hawakutoshea hapo, wakaendelea na saka.
Watajilaumu wenyewe kwa sababu Victor Ngume aliupata mpira na haraka kanyanyoso wake, akamuona mchezaji John Mark Makwata, akamuona mlinda mlango alikuwa amekuja. Kawaida mlinda mlango 1-on-1 ama 1v1 ile kama na mshambuliaji lazima utatoka kuweza kupunguza upana wa lango, lakini striker na yeye ama mshambuliaji akiwa na uhodari kama John Mark Makwata, kitu alichokifanya bila shaka kiliweza kumtatiza mwalimu Ben Mwalala, na ilikuwa ni goli rahisi sana. Goli lake la pili alasiri hii mchezaji Makwata amefanya kitu.
And yeah, the highlights of the FKF Premier League match between KCB and Kariobangi Sharks. Well, we mentioned that we have got the AUB Media Summit on Climate Change, and speaking right now is Sandra Mashere, the director of UNIS in charge of Kenya, Seychelles and Uganda.
Compared to the preceding 20 years. The devastating floods currently affecting East Africa, affecting over 637,000 people in the region, serves as a tragic reminder of this reality. Disasters, fueled by multiple factors, can severely undermine development efforts. If we continue along the current trajectory, an estimated 100 million people could be thrust into poverty due to the impacts of climate change and disasters, according to the World Bank. It is abundantly clear that we cannot achieve the Sustainable Development Goals if we do not address disaster risk. As you know, the Sustainable Development Goals serve as our collective roadmap for securing the well-being and prosperity of all inhabitants of our planet. Regrettably, we find ourselves short of meeting our stated ambitions to meet these goals, even as we contend with new and emerging risks and opportunities. For instance, the rapid spread of misinformation and disinformation on digital platforms, or even efforts to ensure that artificial intelligence and other technologies work in service of humanity. It is against this backdrop that this September, world leaders will come together at the Summit of the Future in New York to take action towards restoring trust and fostering effective international cooperation to safeguard our future for present and future generations. Their discussions will cover accelerating progress towards existing commitments, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, and agreeing on solutions to global challenges faced across different spheres, including sustainable development and financing for development, international peace and security, science, technology and innovation, and digital cooperation, youth and future generations, and transforming global governance. The Summit of the Future outcome document will be the pact for the future, alongside a global digital compact and a declaration on future generations. I encourage you all to follow these discussions. And although the outcome of the summit ultimately rests with world leaders, we all have a role to play. The United Nations is committed to engaging with civil society, and the September summit will benefit from discussions at the UN Civil Society Conference in support of the Summit of the Future, taking place here later this week at the UN headquarters in Nairobi, the first time the conference is being held in the Global South. Cooperation and the restoration of trust lie at the heart of this unprecedented gathering, echoing the very essence of our presence here today at this summit. Indeed, advancing sustainable development and addressing disaster risk requires a concerted, multi-stakeholder effort transcending boundaries and silos. The media has an important role to play in this endeavor. But we have seen in recent times, including during the COVID-19 pandemic, that sharing risk information does not always result in appropriate action. In the face of the success of new technologies, traditional media, including broadcasters such as yourselves, grapple with formidable challenges. Chief among these is the menace posed by misinformation and disinformation that I referenced earlier. We need global efforts to develop healthier information ecosystems and restore trust in public institutions and the media. That is why, as part of the Summit of the Future process, we are working on the United Nations Global Principles on Information Integrity that aim to support a shared understanding of information integrity and provide recommendations for making the information ecosystem more humane and firmly based in human rights. Broadcasters, particularly public broadcasters, bear a crucial responsibility in disseminating accurate, reliable, and science-based information to earn and build the trust of our audiences every single day, even in times of peace. This trust is of paramount importance, as you know, in the context of early warnings and risk information. The collaboration between the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and the World Broadcasting Union strives to enhance broadcasters' ability to provide prompt and easily understandable early warnings, while also integrating disaster risk reduction reporting into their programming. This initiative aims to educate audiences on the importance of managing and preventing disasters. It is with great pleasure that I stand here today, for this collaboration resonates deeply with the core values and missions of the United Nations fostering multi-stakeholder dialogue, sharing knowledge, promoting a deeper understanding of UN activities, for it is your UN, spotlighting actions addressing some of the world's most pressing issues, and advancing our enduring partnership with the media. I commend the work that is done here and wish you a successful summit. Thank you.
Allow me now to invite Fanny Langela, Head of Content and Channels at the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Welcome. Clap. Let's invite her with a clap.
Merci, bonjour. It's a pleasure to be here today. Mr. Paul Macharia, Mr. Grégoire Njaka, Mrs. Sandra Macharia and Mrs. Natalia Lieva, Mesdames et Messieurs, chers collègues, I would like first to thank the government of Kenya for welcoming us here and the African Union of Broadcasters for organizing this event. I also extend my gratitude to the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation for hosting this regional media summit on climate change. This is the first time we hold this event in Africa, and this couldn't be more timely. The tragic impact of the extreme rainfall across East Africa and the resulting floods these past weeks are a stark reminder of the critical importance of this agenda, because ultimately, this is about protecting lives and livelihood. Working with public service broadcasters in countries affected by disasters is strategic and vital for the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Media are part of the necessary transformation for a more resilient world. You are key actors to inspire, educate, show solutions, and generate the actions needed to achieve the goal of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Climate Paris Agreement, and the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is why 4 years ago, we embarked on a partnership with the broadcasting unions. And this partnership has three main objectives. First, we want to strengthen the role of the media in the early warning chain. Media must be fully part of the multi-hazard early warning system activation process. And we are particularly calling your attention on your role in serving the last mile of communication to those who are most at risk. And to this end, we are encouraging the establishment of working groups, bringing together national Met offices, national disaster management agencies, and national broadcasters. These groups can strengthen an horizontal coordination and coherent messaging in times of crisis. Our second objective is to strengthen the resilience of broadcasters when disaster strikes. How long can you keep broadcasting if there is a blackout? What would it take to restore live broadcast after an earthquake or a cyclone? Media are a lifeline for affected populations to access critical information in a disaster. And to be able to fulfill this role, broadcasting infrastructure must be resilient, and your operations must be prepared to react swiftly in time of disasters. Finally, as we heard, disseminating information about risk doesn't always lead to behavior change or meaningful preventative action. And we have seen that across many countries during the pandemic. And this is why our third objective is to expand the scope of disaster reporting. Media coverage is often about disaster is often reactive, where what happened, how many affected people, what is the extent of the losses. And this is very important. But if we are to restore public trust, if we are to drive the change we need to build resilient societies, we need public conversations about risk. And we need this conversation to take place also in times of peace. We need the media to talk about disaster risk, to showcase international and national solutions, good practices, engage and serve people on the crucial disaster risk reduction issues that affect their lives and livelihoods. Because disaster risk reduction is important to your audience. It's about personal safety. It's about your family. It's about your personal finance. It's about business and the economy. And the co-production that will be presented tomorrow will illustrate how you can contribute also to this public conversation about risk and resilience through longer form of reporting. The Sendai framework states that governments have the primary responsibility to reduce disaster risk. But the framework also stresses the importance of engaging all stakeholders in risk reduction efforts, including the media, because ultimately, disaster risk is everyone's business. Et nous comptons sur vos contributions. Merci.
Thank you. Once again, let's clap for all our 4 panelists. Before I invite our next guest, that is Ms. Natalie Ilivia, you can prepare to come on stage. She will be speaking, she is the Global Project Manager, UNDRR, the World Broadcasting Union, media. She'll be speaking on the Media Saving Lives initiative. But even as she makes her way on stage, I think it's important to mention the representation that we have here today. We have at least 27 countries have signed in. And I just want to call them out so that you can appreciate how big this event is and how much we are all interested in this initiative. So we have representation, of course, from Kenya, where we are. We have Rwanda, we have Cameroon, we have China, we have Togo, we have Ghana, we have France, we have Senegal, we have Mauritius, Benin is also represented, Tanzania is also in the room, Côte d'Ivoire, South Africa, Sierra Leone, Republic Democratic of Congo, Italy, Nigeria, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mali, Burkina Faso, Malawi, Madagascar, and Malaysia. Please clap for yourselves and welcome once again to this event. Over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Catherine. I'll be very brief because I understand I sit between your coffee break. So I will just recap how we started this journey and what we have done with this Media Saving Life initiative. The journey started in Sendai, actually, because we have several people here, Bridget, Leonie, Giacomo, and several other people from Africa. When we draw together with all the unions, including African Union of Broadcasting, our first media stakeholder commitment. And the commitment was clear because Sendai framework actually have a lot of reference to media. And we wanted to make sure that media is not anymore a microphone for all agencies, so governments, just to come and tell you, read this statement, read these early warnings. We wanted media to be part of the conversation and part of the solution. Because we are living in 21st century, who can imagine anything in the world could be done without the power of media? I don't think so. It was a long, long journey. But finally, we had the trust of UNDRR and all unions in the Global South. This is African Union, Asia Pacific, my mother organization, Caribbean, and now Arab Union are part of this project. It started in 2020.
And that is Natalia Ilieva, who is the Global Project Manager at UNDRR and also at the WBU Media Saving Lives Initiative, speaking at the first AUB Media Summit on climate change. We shall be taking a short break, and when we come back, we continue with a conversation on sports. Check our sign language interpreter. This has been Anne Wangeshi.
Technology has become a crucial part of our society. Without technological advancements, so much of our everyday lives would be drastically different. As technology develops, it strives to fulfill the changing needs of society. This means that technology exists to help us achieve the things that we wouldn't be able to achieve without it. Take on Tech looks at the advantages and downside of technological innovation in a world that is becoming increasingly dependent on new digital technologies. Every Monday at 10:30 p.m.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Mashinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with our music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Mashinani, Radani Talent.
On KBC Channel 1, we are a TV station like no other. Get a taste of the best in entertainment.
Yes, indeed.
Feel the passion.
Will you promise me?
I swear that you will never lose me. I can't get married to you.
I'm sure you knew about it. That's why you're making fun of me.
Experience the drama.
Get out. Who is the man in this one?
And the laughter. Move to the beat.
We are live from Broadcasting House.
And get informed on the latest happenings. KBC Channel 1.
Wow. Yeah!
We are the full package.
Oh, yes.
And Kenya's watching.
Thank you very much for joining us.
And welcome back to Sports Check on KBC Channel 1. My name is Daniel Wahome. Well, this morning having conversations around schools cross-country. Kenya will be hosting the World on Sunday at the Ngong Racecourse. And this is the second time that the ISF World Schools Cross-Country Championships is going to be on the African soil. 20 years plus of waiting, and it's happening. So we'll be speaking with Coach Robert Ngisirei and the IS cross-country coordinator, Gikonyo Kariuki. But first, let's talk this business of sports. The Strathmore Business School on Thursday will be hosting a one-day sports round table. And the conversations around business, governance, media, and law in sport. So they're going to have various speakers and obviously the sessions that are there so that people can understand the dynamics that are happening. Oh, yeah, and I wouldn't forget technology, because there's a big disruption because of the advent of technology when it comes to the administration of sport, and also esports, which is changing the way everyone is perceiving sports. And to speak about that, on my immediate left, I've got Khairan Noor, who is a lawyer and she specializes in sports law. Khairan, welcome.
Thank you, Daniel.
And we also have got from Strathmore University, Richard Wanjohi. He's a data scientist and he's been doing a lot of this work around it. Richard, welcome.
Thank you.
Richard, I'll start with you as, speaking for Strathmore Business School as the host of this sports round table. The reason for you to come up and have this conversation around the business of sports and everything around it?
As a university, we pride ourselves in creating an entrepreneurial space and also disrupting the different sectors that we operate in. We have done that for the business side of things, in ICT, in health, and also in education. It was important that a university now also puts sports as one of the mainstream activities that they want to disrupt. And this got approval from none other than the Vice Chancellor himself. If you know, our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Vincent Ogutu, is an avid runner. He'll be having the VC run on the 25th of May. And as part of that conversation, he told us to have this roundtable to have everyone in the sports ecosystem to discuss what are the issues that are affecting sports, what are the disruptions that you've just stated that are happening, what are the areas that we can help develop, either on the business side of things, mainstreaming data, use of technology, and also just providing an enabling environment for anyone who wants to be in that space.
Well, disruption is a term that is being used a lot, but it's how you reject. Just define the disruptions that you would see, that would be happening in the Kenyan sports landscape.
Let me start with the player or athlete perspective. If you're training for any sport right now, if you're not using any data, if you're not using any sports science, unless you're really superhuman, you will not be able to succeed at the international space. If you look at our sprinters who are at the World Athletics Relay Championships, they did not get beat because they did not have the capability or the strength. It's because they did not use that small aspect of data and be able to split their times and understand that aspect. So if we want to compete at the global or international space, we have to be able to use data from that basic level, from what you consume, from what you do on a day-to-day basis, to how you then are able to impact the team as a whole.
Well, very interesting. Well, the world relay is quite tough for a lot of teams, but yeah, as Africans, we can pride ourselves in Botswana about what they did. Kairan, let's talk about the current legal space in Kenyan sports. I know there's a lot of conversation about the Sports Act, what it says, but and also the issue, contracts. What's the real status of the sports and law?
Well, over time we've seen that there's been a lot of disagreement or clash when it comes to the national laws and the international laws that are put aside, or rather set up by the international federations. And we've actually seen some of our federations being banned by the international federation, for example, FIFA banning FKF, the cricket committee also having to go through the specialized committee to look through their constitution, etc. So over time, and I mean, I've had the pleasure of coming here before and we've spoken about this governance and autonomy of sports. Sports organizations generally have that specificity, and they have the discretion to come up with their own international rules and regulations, which have already been put across by the world governing bodies. And the national organization level, they have to adopt the same systems, the same rules and regulations in order to be compliant with them, and of course now having the mandate to be recognized and be able to run the respective sports in the national level or even the continental level, such as CAF. So as we've witnessed before, and this is something that has been coming up where government comes in maybe to interfere, as they like to say it, government interference or third-party interference, where they feel like the government does not have the specific knowledge to come and mandate.
That is somebody like FIFA.
Yes. To come and tell them this is how football should be run. Because FIFA will come and say, we are the experts, we are the ones who've come up with all the rules and regulations to govern this sport, so why are you coming to tell us now how to do it? And why are you intervening also on these operations on the national level? So it's been a wrangle, and I think it's a tug of war that I hope with time we're going to be able to rectify that, with the hope that and this is what I always say, where government and international federations come together on the table and come up with, say, bargaining agreement where say, this is how far you can come and regulate, and this is how far we can come and regulate, and we work in harmony in that space.
Now let's just take a look at the Sports Act and the international the regulations from international federations.
Yeah.
How do we balance this out such that administratively federations can actually set up things rather than feel constrained in terms of geography and things like that?
Yeah. For me, in my opinion, I think it's paramount to, again, as a sports lawyer, we let the sports people run their sports. But then again, when it comes to issues that would say inherently contravene national laws or public policy or make it illegal, then that's where we can say, okay, this needs, something needs to be done in this space. But then again, we have to allow the sports federation to come up with their own rules and regulation, internal framework on how to govern themselves and operate, manage the public funds, etc. But then again, if you look at it, if you're in a country that also has their own national laws, we're talking about, for example, leadership. The Article 10 of the Constitution already sets out how a leader in public office should be in terms of integrity, should be accountable, should be transparent, should be, just hold high levels of integrity. If some of these things are then seen not to be done, then the government has, I would say, the interest to come and overlook this, because again, also the government funds sports in Kenya, so you cannot just say, we'll give you the money, you do what you want, and no one comes in to question how you do it or run your office.
Maybe to add something on the same, sports does not exist in isolation. And the same remains for each discipline. Rugby has its own international body that either funds the local outfits and vice versa. You might need guidance on some certain aspect, either its participation, on the rules that govern the sport, on whatever then ascribes to that particular sports discipline. So you have to abide by certain rules and laws and regulations. So as a national body, then you have to keep checking on what's happening at the international level. Case at hand, Athletics Kenya used to be Kenya AAA, but because World Athletics renamed itself from IAAF and became World Athletics, we also had to rename ourselves and become Athletics Kenya. And the same remains for these other...
Actually, swimming had to rename themselves to Aquatics Kenya. Because they changed from FINA to World Aquatics.
Precisely. So you have to keep to the international standards because you're also competing at an international level. And if you are going to do that, then we have to benchmark with the best of the best.
Let's
maybe
move
just,
on. Yes.
Maybe just to add also, again, sports is a worldwide phenomenon. It's a worldwide event. But then again, if you look at different countries, we have different cultures, we have different socio-economic space. So again, sports also has to adapt to that. In Kenya, we have different cultures, we have different languages, we have different, also even our socio-economic power is not the same as other countries. So you have to look at these things when you come up with the laws, regulations and policies to make them adaptable to what we already have in place, because we cannot just borrow from the US and say, okay, we want sports to be the same as the United States or United Kingdom, so let's just borrow and have it apply in tandem in all aspects of it. So that can't work because we're not at the same landscape.
Yeah. So, Richard, let me come to you because she's mentioned, there's something that was mentioned in 2017 by Sebastian Coe. And I see it as a core of the sports roundtable that you're going to have. He said that World Athletics, their activity is track and field, but their business is entertainment. So how do we then bring in that entire business aspect into perspective such that, one, you can attract the crowds, two, make it family friendly, three, generate revenue at the end of the day?
I love the approach that SEBCO decided to take on World Athletics, and I think we have seen that over the last couple of maybe 5 to 8 years. They've been able to split their properties from cross countries to what we had over the weekend, the World Athletics Relay Championships. So they've been able to take their properties and commercialize them. And that gives them a wide range of properties to work with. Same happens to FIFA. You have your World Cups, you have your Euros, you have your Continental Championships, you have your Club Championships. So they are able to take the properties and prop them up and provide them for commercial use. We have to appreciate, for the last 30 years, sports became a commercial and business property. We cannot continue in the same vein, and especially in this country, because we still view we have this perception that sports is a recreational activity. Your kids tell you they're playing football, you still want to channel them into education, well and good. But if you can be able to provide for them that extra or that parallel capability or opportunity to grow in the sport, we have seen Angela Okutoi won gold in the African All Africa Games. Look at all the Jamal Mohammed engineer.
Michael
Lunga. What is he doing in the Arab states? We have enough players that we can look up to and say, this is a profession like any other, and they can be able to provide for their families, and we can provide that ecosystem even within this country. Yes.
So, for, let's now bring in here, if you're to provide that, one of the things that if you're going to do business, have a contract, and just give us, just the background of a contract, because at times people say, ndio hii kandarasi tumeweka, but what are the key things somebody should look out for?
Yeah. Well, as any contract, and most of us will probably have entered into a contractual obligation, and not necessarily just a written one, but even an express contract. And the main aspects to look at in a contractual agreement is where, one, there's an offer and acceptance. You've come to me, Khairan, I want to buy this for this amount of money, and I say yes. That's one step towards building that contractual obligation. The other one is we both have to be competent parties. We're adults, we have sound mind where we know this is what we're entering into, you understand the terms, I understand the terms, and we move ahead.
I remember somebody called, there's something called the McNaughton rules.
The reasonable man. Yeah. So the other aspect is genuine assent. Yeah. No one is coercing me. There's no duress. I'm not being manipulated or I would say put under pressure to enter into this contract. I'm entering into it willingly, knowing exactly what my terms and obligations are, and the same what I'm expected from you, and we move ahead from that. The other part is consideration. Are you going to pay me money? Are you going to pay me in service? Are you going to pay me maybe in goods? Yeah, so that's the term that is consideration. It's not always monetary, although in most cases it would be a monetary consideration. The other part is it has to be of lawful obligation or objective. What you're entering into is not illegal, does not contravene public policy, because if it's not legal, we go to a court, it's not going to be enforceable because it's going to be a void contract. Yeah, and lastly, of course, not often, but it's required to be in writing, because again, we need to have something to fall back into, because at the end of the day, in every contract you'll always have a dispute resolution, and most of the time you'll have a dispute arising from that contract, so at least you need to have something written that you can go back to and say this is what we entered into. The terms say, for example, if you're the one in breach, I can say he breached this term, he breached this term, now I want these damages, or I want myself to be restituted in this manner.
Now, whenever you're dealing with these things, and let me come to sports people, because we'll see the photos of somebody with a pen, but they may not have signed what they sign on at times on what they haven't read.
Yeah.
What would you tell any sports person, any person who is in sports business at times, when it comes to the signing of such contracts?
So it's not unique to sports. This is something that happens all over, where you get someone is being offered a contract. The first thing they probably look at is the consideration clause. How much am I getting out of this
or the number
arrangement,
of zeros,
or the number of zeros, and they overlook the other areas. And I mean, as we speak in terms of sports, it's the same thing. Many players or many athletes get into trouble because of that. They don't go to a lawyer to look at, and it doesn't have to be a sports lawyer. Any lawyer can give you a basic understanding or interpretation of a contract. So you should at least try and get legal representation or interpretation of that contract before you sign. And if you cannot afford, or if you cannot get someone to do pro bono, just try and understand, ask questions, or even the party who has presented that contract to you, ask them, what does this mean? What does it entail for me? Beyond just what you're going to be paid. Yeah? And that is a very big problem. That is a very big problem, because people lack the legal knowledge and they not seek that assistance. And again, we know ignorance is no defense in law. So when you come before a court or a judge and you say, I did not know, but you ought to have known. Why did you sign? Why did you put your signature on that piece of paper without understanding fully what you're getting into?
Well, the dangers of signing things you haven't read. Dry ink is said to be as powerful talk about business in itself and the information you've picked about media. And I'll start with broadcasting. With a little bit of personal interest, obviously. And how it can help, and how it generates, and how it works for the revenue generation for sports.
I think I'll start from the way you asked the question about Cybercore deciding that World Athletics can prop up and become commercial. Any sports that is worth its salt has to provide its audience with the different platforms. So you have your live audience, which goes to the stadium or to the respective playing area. But the biggest, and which is the most lucrative, is the media. Because then you have the eyeballs that, are not just domiciled in your geographical area, but across the world. If we saw what happened with the AFCON, the one that ended earlier this year, we had record numbers of viewership all the way in South America, Southeastern Asia.
170 territories.
There you go. So if you have a property that is able to sell, you are able to then provide a lot of revenue to your sport and also get some money, into your coffers. So in the local scenario, we have not been able to push that. I think the tragedy of our situation is that a lot of local stations have not been able to invest in sports. I think the national broadcaster is taking precedence in this. You have, decided to host the local premier games, which is a boon to the sport. But if we can then push this further and say, out of the big sports like Kenyan volleyball, basketball, athletics, are we able to provide regular viewership and be able to give our audiences different magazine programs? So, for example, we have the live events, we have post-review events, we have pre-review events. That will give our appetites to be able to view these shows. And that then also gives an opportunity to advertising companies and commercial interest to come into the game.
Let me come in this, because this is Strathmore Business School. You'd have some real form. What kind of information do you have when it comes to why at times getting a commercial partner, even for broadcast, will be difficult? So is it the governance, or is it the so-called GDP manenos?
So this is part of the reason that we're having this roundtable. 2 years ago, we hosted an event that was a curtain raiser to the football summit that was hosted 2 years ago by Brian Masala with the Football Foundation for Africa. But when we had discussions within the room, we discovered that the sports ecosystem is either, sort of had stalled, and there is a lot of things that are going underneath that we don't know about. For example, just what you've said about the sports media investments, we have seen little to no investment from local media stations. But if I look at the flip side of it, churches, agriculture programs, I've seen them being put on almost every channel, from your local stations within the national broadcasters to other private media houses. The same can be done for sports. This issue of having 5 minutes of sports every end of the broadcast, news broadcast, we can push this to about 30, 50 minutes, and not just on Saturday. We can have this either 2 or 3 times in a week. We have the Olympics coming up. Has anyone decided to go back and look at the history of what happened to Kenya pre, post, what has happened in the last 6 years since we started participating in the National Olympics? So Strathmore, as a business school or as a university, decided that we should have these discussions, first of all, to understand the ecosystem. Then now, from what the ecosystem tells us, these are the challenges, these are the gaps. Then now we give our input and say, okay, this is how we can help you. Either use of technology or use of data. We can also recommend, develop programs around them. We hosted the SuperSport team in the mid-2000s, where we were able to train teams between 2006 and 2010, and that brought a lot of professionalism within the National League then. If we can be able to do that to 3 or 4 of the sports, we'll have made not just the impact that we want within the country, but also within the region. We have the Africa Cup of Nations coming up in 2027. If we can provide that opportunity to start that investment right now, by 2027 we'll be leaps and bounds ahead of many African states.
Well, he's mentioned 2027, and also I know we are going to be having a conversation after this about schools cross-country, and it brings about minors, youngsters, and how they are to be protected in law and sport. I think the first life ban to be issued by the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya was to adults who were in charge of a swimmer, and she had anti-doping rule violations. So, Hairan, how do we protect minors from, one, their support, athlete support personnel, and number two, that even their guardians do not exploit their revenues that they may be making by the time they are 17, and they're playing sports like what? Swimming, tennis, gymnastics, because that's where you'd find some of these youngsters.
Yeah. Yes, sports is unique in that sense, where you find minors can enter, contracts, but of course, with the parent or guardian signing the contract, making it valid. As you mentioned, most of it swimming, tennis, and gymnastics, because that's where most athletes would start at a very young age.
And football globally is becoming the other one.
Yeah. But you see, with football, for you to enter a professional contract, you must have attained the adult age to enter a professional contract. But exploitation of minors is, I would say, it's a conundrum that I think it would need a lot of work to start rectifying the field, because even parents and the guardians themselves, more often than not, do not have their best interests at heart, because as they would automatically see that this is somewhere we can make money. My child has talent, so I'll push them however hard I can, so they make it to that level where they can now get lucrative deals out of this. Like I said, well, one, we could start with public awareness, educating the parents on how to look out. Well, not all of them are bad. Majority, I would hope, are good and look out for their children's interests. But then again, they also don't understand these technical aspects of some of these sports, or even when it comes to the contract signing and negotiation. Yeah. So for you to be able to at least have that power, or at least have that upper hand, always try and look out in terms of where are the liabilities, where are the loopholes, because again, I should have mentioned this earlier, most of these organizations, companies, even clubs, when they give you that contract, they have internal and external experts who've already looked through possibly all the avenues that they could face liabilities from, all the illegal loopholes that they could fall, trap in. So they enter into that contract knowing they're safe. What about you, on the other hand? Yeah. So if you're not in a position to question, if you're not in a position to say, okay, this doesn't work, how can we make sure, their rights and interests are safeguarded in this place? They have the education, of course, they have the rest, the time. When you talk about minors, again, one of the issues I would always want to reiterate on is the safeguarding of minors when it comes to exploitation, harassment, abuse, especially sexual abuse. Yeah, and not just girls, but boys as well, because they're vulnerable groups and they fall in that criteria where they're easily exploited. And we have coaches, we have managers, we have, their doctors who can easily just, want to harm them in different ways, not just physically, but even emotionally and mentally.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, the other one that I want to talk about is the protection of the rights of athletes.
Yeah.
Name, image, and likeness. How is that done?
For name, image, and likeness, again, you have to look at the intellectual property right, because as I speak today, I cannot say I have that power. Yeah. For an athlete to have reached that level, they have that, I would say, celebrity status for them to back it up with a monetary consideration. They say, for you to use my image, for you to use my name, either in advertisement or pushing for your goods and services, you have to pay me this amount of money. So again, those are the things that would come in a contractual agreement when negotiating either with a corporate or either a TV station or a company that is pushing for product advertisement. So these are some of the things that an agent or a lawyer then would come in to negotiate on behalf of the athlete, or even if they have a manager in place, these are things they would look out for them.
Richard, let me come in and talk about something that's happening. Technology. And I'm going to say, when it comes to tech, it's on two platforms. The media side of it and esports. what's the outlook for these two from the information that you may have picked?
So we've seen an explosion of use of technology. I think post-pandemic, because of the way technology was adopted first in our lives, use of virtual classes, virtual meetings, virtual almost learning as well, that gave an explosion to the esports sector, and especially in Kenya or this part of the world. We have seen, and I come from an institution where you're meeting impressionable young people. If they're not in class, they're either on their laptops. If they're not on their laptops, then the next thing is they're on FIFA, playing with their friends. So we have seen an explosion of esports within the space. And what then that means is that we cannot afford to push this segment of the market and tell them that they cannot engage in this side of sports. Is finding a way that they can be able to do it, but do it productively. If they're doing it maybe 1 or 2 hours in a day, that's well and good. If they're going to get commercial payments out of this, we have players who are being endorsed and they have gotten contracts to participate in tournaments, both local and international. Why not? Because then they are able to provide an income and get something out of it. On the flip side of use of technology, we have, let me give the example of the institution. In each of the team sports that we're currently participating in, rugby, football, basketball is the next one. We collect data right from the training pitch. So the coaches...
And there's hockey too.
And there is hockey. So the coaches are able to look at the players and be able to test them from that aspect. They can be able to understand this player has participated in 5 or 6 training sessions within the week. This is the level of output that I expect from them over the weekend. And then using that same data, you're able to look at your opponents and say, okay, this is where, and I'll give you a good example. Our football team, our soccer team used to have very tall players, but our weakest point used to be the defense of the set pieces. So when the coach looked at what is wrong, because you have your tall players, but they're not able to defend the set pieces. So using that data, he was able to rectify that, and they became one of the best teams, especially in defending set pieces. So that is something that we have said. First, as an institution, we are already practicing, but then now we want to impact that in the local and national game.
Okay. Well, so, Hayran, final word as we close and transition. So I'll give each of you 30 seconds as we close. What is the most important thing? What's the next big thing to look out for as far as law and sport is concerned?
Well, that's a wide net. For me, this is something we're already working on, and of course part of having the sports business roundtable is being able to have consistent education platforms where we can acknowledge people, we can create the awareness, we can advocate for people to know all these issues around sports and law. Because again, without the understanding, without the proper implementation and compliance of the law, then sports sets to fail at the end of the day. So we need people to understand the different issues with contracts, transfer of players, doping being also one of a major issue. So for me, it's all about capacity building, awareness and education around these areas, and we hope we can, have more stakeholders setting up these platforms and calling experts to come and educate the masses on this.
Oh, thank you, Richard. A final word from you as a host of the SBS Sport Business Roundtable.
We welcome everyone in the sports ecosystem, be you an educator, lawyer, or entrepreneur. We want to open up these discussions because we want to partner with you. We want to make sports one of the biggest and most vibrant sectors in this part of the world. We are one of the few countries across the continent and across the world that have multi-sport. Anything from canoeing to rowing to now fencing and your traditional sports, athletics, football, volleyball. We want to provide an enabling environment so that anyone who gets into sport is able to reap out of it.
Thank you very much. Richard Wanjohi is a data scientist at the Strathmore University, and Hayran Noor, who's a sports law expert, speaking about the SBS Sports Roundtable that's taking place on Thursday. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll be having a conversation about the ISF World Schools Cross Country Championships. It's going to be live on KBC Channel 1 from the Ngong Racecourse on Sunday, the 12th of May. And we're joined by Robert Ngisire, who is a coach and the coordinator of the championships, Gikonyo Karaoke. But first, information and communication Communications and the Digital Economy Cabinet Secretary, the Honorable Eliud Owalo, is leading a food distribution to households affected by floods in Kisumu County, and he was at PAP on DT in Nyakach. Let's get this story.
As you are aware, these floods have caused devastating effects and posed fundamental challenges to the people. So as a national government, we have come in to support those who have been displaced by the floods. The national government has made available a total of 360 bags of beans, 200 bags of rice, and 20 bags of assorted food items to the people of Nyakach in the interim measure, in the interim period. And we will sustain this moving forward. But the government has also put in place an elaborate plan to ensure that all those who have been marooned in their homes by way of floods are evacuated. The Ngao officers are already aligned. We already have the Coast Guard, we have the Red Cross, and the county government as well. All the relevant entities are working together to ensure that all those who are marooned in their homes are evacuated to safer positions or locations. But moving forward, I want to appeal to our people. Don't wait for the floods. If you are currently living next to the river, on the river bank, please, the government is ready and willing to assist you. You need to evacuate. You need to move out of the river bank. Because the floods is unpredictable. The rain is unpredictable. We don't want to be responsive to negative effects of floods. We want to be proactive. That's why we are appealing to our people to move out of the riverbanks immediately, based on the appeal that has already been made by His Excellency, the President. Two, this rain is posing a challenge, but it is also an opportunity. We need to plant as many trees as possible during this rainy season. Let us plant as many trees as possible. Government entities are willing to provide the seedlings. Lake Basin Development Authority will provide the seedlings in this region, working with cohort with other relevant agencies like the Kenya Forest Service. So let us plant trees so that we are not addressing the challenge of floods today, and then after that we will be addressing the challenge of drought. The only way to have sustainability in the climate space is to plant trees. So let us all plant trees up to individual household. Each and every home, each and every household, we must embark on planting of trees. Akwa chogi doluo kama. Anabiro ka giprauchiel. Wakelo ka mchele gunde mia ariyo. Wakelo ka kendo chiemo mupogro pogro.
And so that is the Cabinet Secretary for Information Communications and the Digital Economy, Eliud Owalo, who was leading a food distribution exercise in Kisumu County. So, welcome back to our conversation on Sports Check. And remember, our sign language interpreter is Ann Wangeshi. So this conversation is about youngsters, because Kenya is going to be hosting the World on Sunday at the Ngong Race Course. And this is for the ISF World Cross Country Championships. The second time the event is being hosted on the African continent. Morocco did it, 22 years ago? So it's been an entire generation. It's very interesting that those who were born in that year are not eligible for this competition just by the age. That's how long it's been. So to have a conversation about that, on my immediate left, we've got Gikonyo Kariuki, who's coordinating these championships, and he also was coach of the World Under-18 team. Correct. 2017. Yeah. He was that. And we've got somebody who's been working a lot with the youngsters, Robert Ngisirei. Karibu. And he's the coach of the current team.
Thank you, Waume.
And coach, let me start with you, Coach Ngisirei. The selection process that was done in Nakuru County for the ISF Schools Cross Country Championships, just give us a background into that, because I can see that we've got 3 age categories which the ISF always wants to have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waume. during our selection in Nakuru for ISF team, you know very well that we have 3 categories. That is for both boys and girls. We have under 12, under 15, and under 18. So in Nakuru, we had the trials for all the categories, and we managed to select 30 boys, 31 girls. That is under 12, we have 10 boys, 10 girls. Under 15, we have 15 girls, we have 10 girls, 10 boys. Under 18, we have 11 girls and 10 boys.
Why the extra one for the under 18s?
Thank you very much, Wahome. We had the extra one, which was actually, she's a girl, under 18, she was supposed to be within the championship, but since the CS for sports was visiting her home area, she couldn't manage to be within the championship, and she was identified in the provincial championship in Kapsabet. She's a steeplechase, she's good, and we had to give her a chance to be part of the team.
All right. Now let me come to you, Coach Konyo now, coordinating this. Just give us a brief background on, Kenya getting the rights to host this and the coordination work now that you have got to do going into the Sunday's championship.
Thank you so much, Wahome. Welcome members to this program. Kenya got a chance to host these games after requesting ISF, that is the International Schools Federation, to host the games. And this was after we were affiliated to the same some years back. And actually we have participated before in ISF activities. We had the volleyball in Morocco where our 2 teams participated. That was Kwananze in volleyball girls, and we had Cheptil, which did very well. Kwananze became #1, Cheptil was #2. So we were able to announce our presence at the world level. And International Schools Federation got to know Kenya. And when we tried to convince them that we want to host this cross-country, Kenya being known in cross-country, being the home of cross-country, being the home of athletics, it was easy for us to win the chance to host. So you are granted the chance to host last year. And actually, we started our preparation in earnest. In October last year, we came together as a multi-agency group, touching across all the ministries, from the Ministry of Education being the main ministry, the Ministry of Sports, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Immigration, we have security, all the ministries, including tourism, were all brought together in what we call the Rock Organizing Committee. And we were able to form that committee, which was headed, still being headed by our chairman, Mr. Hassan Duare, who is a director in the ministry. Our CEO is Mr. Barnabas Koril, who is the chairman of the Youth Development Committee at Athletics Kenya, and who has also been the CEO of all the major sporting events here in the country. Talk of Keino Classic, talk of Siriko Classic, talk of the under 18 and under 20. He has been the CEO. So that committee is working, has been working all this time from last year. They have prepared very well. They have done that through committees. And of course, I need to mention here that the schools are equally involved. We have got the Kenya Secondary School Sports, we have the Kenya Junior Schools Sports, and the Kenya Primary School Sports. They are all part of this, and we are actually out to deliver as one. We want to deliver as one, with all the ministries concerned, with all the schools concerned. And actually, the committee has worked very well up to now. This morning, as we came here, we came from a meeting at Athletics Kenya, which is still working on the final touches on the hosting. Of course, this committee came up with committees to run the various departments. We have got the technical department on those who will be officiating. Of course, we have got hospitality, we have got accommodation, we have got the protocol, we have got medical and anti-doping, we have got security, immigration. It's actually multi-sectoral, whereby together we want to deliver and make sure that this being the first event, cross-country, given a chance by ISF, we want to try and see whether we can get bigger chances to host these games. Maybe athletics in future as we go forward.
Okay. Coach Ngisirei, well, just looking at the age categories, first of all, just tell us how you worked with the Kenya Primary Schools Sports Association, and this is mainly for the you'd be looking at it for the under-15s and the under-12s. How did you work with them eventually such that you could have the selection of your team?
Thank you very much, Mr. Waume. Before after our meeting as an LOC, we sat down, we had the meeting chaired by the director in charge of co-curriculum activities. So we had to discuss in light that all our primary, JS and secondary school have to participate so that we can get the team. They managed to pass the information to regional directors, whereby the regional directors gave the information to the county directors of education so that facilitation can take place and the championship to be organized from schools, that is from Sonolis, especially for the young ones. Sonolis division, after division, they come to sub-county. After sub-county, they come now to county. We wanted actually to get the best. From county now is when they move to the regional. And then from there now, every region had to present a team for under 12, under 15, that is boys and girls, and then under 18. KSSA, in the other hand, had also done their provincials. But for primary and JS, they had not done their provincials. So we managed to pen the rule down a bit so that we can enable the counties to bring their best to Nakuru so that we can get the best and not to leave that talented child wherever he or she is. That is how we came up with the team for the primary and the JS, because that is under one person, the head teacher.
Okay.
Yes.
Now for the under-18, this is where you'd have to go through the Kenya Secondary School Sports Association. They were in Machakos. For their nationals, how was that managed?
Mr. Waume, let me take you back. For KSSA, one is provincial, one is regionals were done. We brought everybody on board, every region to identify their best and take them to Nakuru for the trials before Majagos, because the team was named earlier. The names has to be forwarded earlier before the nationals. So the KSSA had gone far. Yes. They had done their regionals, so they had the best in under 18, and some are in under 15. So for under 18, we have the best. Under 15, we have the best. Under 12, you realize that these ones are the upcoming. Yes. They are upcoming. So we have also managed to pick the best, and they are now undergoing vigorous training, knowing very well that we have to look upon the injuries because they have not actually been training for long. So we normally guide them on how to train. Yes.
Just a quick look now. Distances for each of these age grades that they will be doing. The under 12s, under 15s, and under 18s.
Thank you very much. When we talk of under 12, boys and girls, they will be running 1 kilometer, 200 meters. Both boys and girls. When we move to under 15, the girls will be doing 2 kilometers. The boys will be doing 2.5 kilometers. When we move to under 18, the girls will be doing 3.5 kilometers. The boys will be doing 5.5 kilometers. And we have taken them through so that no one will actually be overtrained or undertrained according to his or her own distance. Yes.
All right, so when Agikonyo, now let me come, because when it comes to that, it also now involves how the Ngong race course starting points are going to be done. How much work has been done at the event venue?
Thank you so much. We got to involve our technical bench, led by Leting, Akina Tirop, the whole group which does the work for AK. They got involved from last year. They had to identify the venue, do some measurement in terms of the course. You notice that the distance we are going to have this time are not the normal distances we have of 2 kilometer loop.
Yes.
It has to vary because of the age category. They have been able to work on that route. They have done the mapping, and they have done the route. If actually the route was set. But now because of the rains, you had to change a bit of the route in terms of where you'll be starting and where you'll be heading, so that you can avoid areas which might have a bit of water. But now, as we talk today, the route has been confirmed today. In fact, even the ribbons and everything will be done today. At Gong Racecourse, the actual route will be completed. And even at Nairobi School, where the training will be going on for all the teams, once they arrive, it will be worked out so that once they come, they can use a normal circuit, just like it will be in the competition. It will be done in the course of today. So starting tomorrow, the route will be ready for anybody to use.
So actually, you have an identical circuit set up at Nairobi School?
Correct. At Nairobi School, we have the same circuit, the same distances. You notice that the gaps, the distances done by the under 12, under 15, and 18 have got a distance which you can use a rope of about 1.1 kilometer.
Yes.
The boys can do, those doing 1.2 can do 1.1, around 1.2. Those doing 2.2 can also do 2 circuits. Those doing 3.5 can do about 3 circuits. Those doing 5.5 can do 5 circuits of the same. So you have done a rope with a little variation, which will accommodate all the distances by the different categories of those who are racing.
Now, the other one is, you know, the hosting and accommodation. Just give us a whole overview of how, you know, you bring together all of these children, young people from across the world, and they, you know, they can have the best of accommodation and also enjoy what we'd say is the tropical night skies.
Thank you so much. Now that you talk of the young people, you really want to catch them, because when you catch that young mind, especially coming to Kenya at this stage, we really feel that it will be good enough even for the future. So we have made a cocktail of activities for these people. Once they arrive, of course, they'll start with their main training at Nairobi School, and also they could have a taste of the Gong Racecourse. For the accommodation, most of the teams will be at AUB Hotel. AUB in Westlands. That's where they will be. Most of the teams will be accommodated there. Of course, other guests will be elsewhere, like Weston Hotel and all that, and the Crown Plaza. That's where they will be. But you find most of these athletes will be accommodated at a central venue, and they'll be taken for training, taken for competition, and back to the venue. What you have done is that you have organized a cocktail of activities. And for example, if I may mention that after the games, that is on 12th. On the 13th, you have a visit to the National Park, the animal orphanage. You want these young boys and girls who have been watching wildlife on Discovery, on pictures, to go and feed that giraffe at the orphanage, to have a feel of the National Park and see the animals in there, in their natural environment. And after that, you'll be going to Bomas of Kenya. They will get a taste of Kenya in terms of the food, in terms of the culture, the traditional music. We also have what we call a fun run, whereby it will not now be a country running on its own. You combine them and you form a relay team. One from Nigeria, one from Canada, one from Kenya, and they form a relay team for fun. And then they'll be doing a relay running through the cultural villages we have at Bomas, and passing out the relay baton. You know what the relay baton is? Do you see that short Maasai stick?
Yes.
With beads? That's what they'll be passing. And they'll keep running and passing it around. And then of course, our lunch that time will be served there, that they can get the traditional food and have a feel of Kenya.
Now, we can almost try and guess what they may be served.
Yeah.
Nyama choma is part of it. I know that is going to be a part of it so that they can have a real feel of it. Yeah. A lot of expectations from Kenyans, especially because this is the second, I'm betraying my age here, 17 years since hosting a cross-country event of this multitude. 2007 World Cross Country Championships, and now here we are with the schools cross-country championship. Expectations from the public.
Thank you very much, Mr.
How are
Waume.
you managing that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Waume. First and foremost, I want to tell the public to turn up in large numbers to cheer their young ones, to give them morale. The team, let me say, generally, the team is very ready. God willing, they are healthy, remain the way they are now, because we don't have any injury. Everybody is at his best. They are very ready for the championship. So I promise the entire nation, everybody in wherever they are, the team is intact, and we shall deliver the best. Thank you.
Something else, we know last week the president addressed the nation, and he indicated that schools will not reopen. Just give us a background of the support that you're getting from the Ministry of Education, given that you've got learners in camp for this ISF championship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wahome. We want to thank the government of Kenya, His Excellency the President. He gave us the flag. 2, the rains has been going on all over, but our team is training intact. Even if it rains the whole night, we shall still go for the training wherever we find the road is very smart. We want to thank the Ministry of Education because they have given these young ones time where to stay, where to train, facilities to use. We want to thank especially the Ministry of Education and Sports for lending us a hand to enable the young talents to be trained, to have a very conducive environment where they are training so that they can deliver, they can show the world that even if it is raining, Kenya is a country to watch in sport, in cross country. They can train in every terrain. And they let me pass the information to our neighbors and the visitors. Come, don't fear the rains. We are ready for them.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, let me come to you and just give us a whole idea of the 12th. I know teams will be training, building up to that, but on the 12th, when we've got the cross-country event, just give us an outlook for that.
Thank you so much. On the 12th, that is on Sunday, is when we have the main activity. That's the climax of the whole thing. When the teams will now take the stage, they will take the circuit and compete. We'll be starting at around 10 a.m. with the under 12 category. Then from there, we'll go to the under 15, and then we'll go to the under 18. We'll be awarding the finishers as we continue. There will be a break after every event, and we'll be able to do awards as we continue. Then overall, of course, as we do the cross-country, in between there will be entertainment. The circuit, the way it's designed, it will have a lot of activities. We want to have fun. It's an outing. Because ISF believes in mass sports. That's why they bring as many as possible. And unlike the traditional way where we talk of a team being 6 runners, ISF says bring as many as you can. We want to have as many participating as possible. We want all the kids to be part of the activity, to be part of the games. So we'll be having a lot of activities going on after every event. Even in between the activity, we'll still be having entertainment going on. We want to call upon Kenyans, come on board, come and see and watch your youngsters compete. Because not actually the winning. The interest here is not the winning. We want to catch these young people when they are still very young and create an interest in competing. The idea is to compete. Winning will only happen to the one who will be winning number 1. But others who have participated, they have had an experience. As I can say this, we also be having what we have a very important exercise going on in Kenya, tree planting.
Yes.
So you have set aside a space at Gong Racecourse. You have been allocated a space. Every country will have a space, and they will plant their trees. And if possible, if every athlete is supposed to plant a tree, you can imagine the impact. If these athletes grow up and become senior people and they want to come and watch their forest, watch their trees grow, it will be a culture which can be picked and be replicated anywhere.
So if I'm just looking at Coach Ngisirei's team, I can count at least 75 trees.
Yes.
That is athletes and
officials.
And the officials.
Yes.
Those are at least 70 trees. Just to recap, Bonakekonyo, about how many athletes are you looking at? How many countries? Just to recap that.
Thank you so much. I think as we talk now, the ones who have confirmed participation are about 22 countries, and the number of athletes is about 460 in all the categories. That's the number we're expecting, the number we are planning for in terms of the logistics of the accommodation, the transport, and everything. We are accommodating that, and we have done enough planning to take care of them in terms of all their requirements. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. You've had it. And remember that KBC Channel 1 will be broadcasting the ISF World Cruise Course Country Championships. And so remember that bright and early Sunday on the 12th of May, 10 a.m. Yes, Bonagikon.
Thank you. Maybe as we end the program, I wish to say one or two.
Yes.
Thank, like mentioned here, His Excellency, our President, for giving us the flag.
Yes.
And he made one note. He told the youngsters, you go and win, I'll prepare a party for you. The kids are winning.
Okay.
So the kids are winning. We are telling our president we are coming for the party because our kids are going to win. Number 2, the multi-sectoral approach by the government, whereby all the ministers are involved led by the Ministry of Education, sponsored by the Ministry of Sports, through Sports Fund. We have got, of course, the ISF, led by the President, the TICA, for giving us the chance. We want to thank you. The ROC, led by our chairman, Mr. Duare, Mr. Koril, the CEO, all the ROC members, the committees working, we want to thank you. We want to thank our team because even if we prepared, our team is not ready. We may not make it. Our head coach here, Mr. Ngesirei, a veteran. We started doing the Kenyan team together early 90s. We have been together this time. Over that, almost approaching 30 years together on the Kenyan team. He is doing very well as being the head coach. You have got Kirwa Koech, the overall team manager, also doing well with the team. Of course, the coaches and the schools where the kids are coming from, we want to really thank you. You have done a good job. Without you, Kenya cannot go anywhere. And then the team is ready to perform. We are calling upon all the Kenyans to be out there at Gong and come watch your youngsters start their games at around 10. And to the rest of the world, come and experience Kenya. Come and watch where athletics is made.
Yes.
The home of athletics. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you very much. Konyo Karaoke, he is coordinator for the SF World Schools Cross Country Championships that are taking place on the 12th of May at the Ngong Racecourse. It will be live on KBC Channel 1. If you can't make it to Kenya, make sure that you do follow us and watch us on the screens here and also online. And Coach Robert Ngesirei, who is the coach of the Kenya Schools team, he's got 61 athletes that he's managing, and we wish them all the best. Thank you for being with us. Our sign language interpreter has been Anne Wangeshi. My name is Daniel Wahome. Over to Nancy Okware, who's bringing us Kurunzi Mashinani, and after that, Tambuli. Have a good day.
Mpenzi mtazamaji wa runinga unayoipenda ya KBC Channel 1.
Over the years, we have been at the forefront of broadcast trends to bring you the best of news, entertainment,
how high and how freaking